If I Could Turn Back Time by Cher. Don't you just love that song? Hello, friends, and welcome back to Wishing You Well, the podcast where we explore simple ideas that can help you to feel better in your body, calmer in your mind, and more at home in your life. I'm Maria Patrick, your host, and I'm calling today's episode, If I Could Turn Back Time. Not because we're going to talk about anti-aging creams or biohacking or chasing after our youth, but because we're going to explore something far more powerful. The way your mindset about aging may actually shape how your body ages. And I want to tell you today about one of the most fascinating studies ever done in psychology, a study that sounds like a movie plot, but it's completely real. It involves a group of older men who were at a retreat center, redesigned to look exactly like the 1950s. And the results that shocked researchers were that they experienced improvements in vision, posture, memory, grip strength, and overall vitality without anyone changing their meds or getting them on any formal exercise or nutritional programs. These men all changed for the better. And the only thing that changed was how the men thought about themselves in time. So today we're going to talk about a famous study that was done by Dr. Ellen Langer. We're going to talk about what that study has taught us about aging and possibilities, and how you can gently apply this mindset shift in your own life, no matter your age. So settle on in and let's begin. In the late 1970s, Dr. Ellen Langer, a Harvard psychologist, had a radical idea at the time. Back then, aging was viewed largely as a biological downhill slide, inevitable and irreversible, and for the most part, out of our control. The prevailing message was, this is just what happens when you get older and you have to accept it. But Dr. Ellen wondered, what if part of aging isn't biological, but actually psychological? What if the stories we tell ourselves about aging, about what's possible, what's appropriate, and the things we can or cannot do anymore, what if those stories quietly shape our bodies and our health? So she designed an experiment that was bold and beautiful. She invited a group of men in their late 70s and early 80s to spend a week at a retreat center. But it wasn't just any retreat. The entire place was transformed to look and feel exactly like it was 20 years earlier, 1959. The furniture, the music, the magazines, the radio broadcasts, the TV shows, the sports scores, the news. Nothing in that building acknowledged anything after that year. And here's the key part. The men weren't asked to pretend it was 1959. They were asked to live at the retreat center for a week as if it truly was 1959. So what did they do? They spoke about their lives as if they were their younger selves, younger by 20 years. They were discussing current events from that time. They dressed the way that they had in 1959. They listened to the music that they loved in 1959. They engaged in conversations about the future, their future, from that point in time, 1959. Meanwhile, Dr. Ellen had another group of men go to a similar retreat center where the same activities and meals were taking place, but they were simply asked to reminisce about the past while staying grounded in the present year. So both groups had the same experiences. They socialized, they played games, they relaxed, but only one group of men was immersed in the psychological experience of stepping back into their younger selves. And here's what happened. After just 1 week, the men in the experimental group showed measurable improvements in their vision, their hearing, their memory, their grip strength, their posture, their walking speed, their appetite, their mood, and their self-confidence. Some even appeared to be physically younger to independent observers. And here's the part that gets me every time I hear about this study. Several men who had arrived to the center using canes left without them. No new medications, no new exercise programs, no shift in diet, no medical interventions, just a shift in identity, just a shift in mindset, just a week of being treated and treating themselves as younger, capable, alive, engaged men. And when Dr. Ellen Langer replicated the study years later with similar results, it became one of the most cited experiments in psychology because it challenged one of our longest and deepest assumptions, that aging is something that happens to us instead of something that happens with us, shaped by how we think, move, engage, and expect. So now let me be very clear. The study isn't saying, if you just think young enough, you'll never age. That's not helpful. We all age. Our bodies are going to change. Our lives are going to shift. Loss happens. Energies fluctuate. But what this study did teach us, what it does say, is something far more empowering. Our bodies are listening to our minds more than we realize. When we hold expectations about aging, the stories that we repeat to others and to ourselves about what's normal, the way we talk about our bodies, the way we relate to time itself, all of that shapes how we experience our physical lives. And that is subtle, but it's also powerful, because what it means is that many of us start aging ourselves long before our bodies actually start aging. Check me on this. Have you ever said or heard someone that you care about say, I'm too old for that. My knees just can't do that anymore. That's a young person's thing. Well, what do you expect at my age? Sometimes those statements are grounded in a real physical experience, and of course we should be compassionate about that. But sometimes they're just habits, the things that we say, that negative back talk that we say to ourselves, inherited beliefs, cultural scripts. When we adopt those scripts, what happens? Our world begins to quietly shrink around us. We stop reaching, we stop challenging ourselves, we stop playing, we stop trying new things, we stop imagining and dreaming about new chapters. Not because we can't, but because we've decided that we shouldn't. And what Dr. Langer's work suggests is that the body often follows the mind's lead. There's an ancient Chinese expression that I share with my students in Qigong often. Yi Dao, Qi Dao. Where the mind goes, the energy follows. It doesn't necessarily happen instantly, but gradually, consistently, if we expect decline, we will often find it. If we expect capability and success, we will often uncover it. So aging is a story that we're telling ourselves. Notice when it comes up. When you think about aging, what words come to mind? Do you say the words to yourself, wisdom, freedom, resilience, depth? Or do you say these words to yourself? Decline, limitation, fragility, loss, weakness. Neither list is wrong per se, but the balance between them is what matters, because every culture tells stories about aging, but many of ours, the stories that we tell, are very discouraging. We are told that youth equals vitality, that age equals slowing down, that youth equals beauty, that age equals invisibility, that youth equals relevance. that age equals obsolete. And whether we realize it or not, we absorb those messages. One day we wake up and think to ourselves, oh, I guess I'm at that stage now. And something inside us contracts. What if age wasn't narrowing? What if it was actually widening? What if growing older didn't mean shrinking your world, but inhabiting your life more fully? My mom recently, a year or so ago, moved into an independent living center. It was a decision that she made by herself, for herself. And in the time that she's been living there, she's been aging backwards because she gets up every day with a purpose and a passion. She has people to meet for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. She has exercise classes that are right down the hall from her room. She needs to walk down the length of the hall, long hall and back to get her mail, instead of that short walk that she used to have to her mailbox. She plays mentally challenging games with her fellow residents 2, 3, 4 times a week. They have challenging debates and discussions about life and current events and the news over their meals. They surround themselves with music and crafts and physical fitness, brain games, nutritious food. They even have a happy hour or two. Her life has not shrunk. It's gotten more full. What if our vitality isn't about how old our body is, but about how curious our minds remain? What if strength isn't about muscle mass, but about being adaptable and having emotional resilience and being present? The men in Dr. Ellen's study didn't suddenly become young again. They became engaged again. They became curious again. They became participants in life again. Instead of just sitting back and saying, I'm 80 some odd years old, I'm just going to observe life. They were 20 years younger and participating again. And guess what? Their bodies responded. And here's something beautiful about the study. The men weren't doing workouts. They weren't stretching themselves on yoga mats. They weren't lifting weights. They were simply doing this: walking, talking, laughing, playing games, carrying things, moving through space with purpose, listening to music that brought them back to a point in time where they felt young, wearing clothing that they were feeling alive when they put on that morning. They were inhabiting their bodies instead of protecting them. And this aligns perfectly with something that we know deeply in Qigong and in mindful movement practices. The body thrives on gentle, meaningful, varied movement. Not overexertion, not punishment, but movement that says, I'm here, I'm alive, I participate. Youthfulness in the body isn't about intensity. It's about circulation and fluidity and adaptability and trust. And trust comes from use, being able to use our bodies. You know that expression, use it or lose it. When we stop moving, we lose confidence. When we lose confidence, we move less. And suddenly the body becomes inflexible and fragile, not because it had to, but because we were no longer inviting our body to stay capable, to stay in the game. The men in the retreat didn't just remember their younger years, they embodied them. They stood taller, they walked differently, they gestured more, they interacted more, they moved their bodies to the favorite songs, and their body responded by saying, oh, so we're doing this again. Another huge piece of that study was mental engagement. The men weren't being passively entertained. We live now in a time where we are being passively entertained. We are binge watching. We are doom scrolling. They weren't just watching TV, sitting quietly. They were debating, discussing, reflecting, sharing stories, all of the things that my mom is doing in the new place where she's living. They're talking about current events, but in the sake of the men at the retreat, they were talking about events from their younger timelines, engaging in ideas from then. They weren't positioned as elders being cared for. They were being thought of as and seen as active thinkers living in their prime. And the brain loved it. The brain thrives on novelty, on complexity and problem solving, on meaning, and on feeling and being relevant. When we stop at all, when we stop learning, stop wondering, stop exploring, the brain contracts. But when we stay curious and engaged, regardless of our age, the brain expands. Curiosity is one of the most anti-aging forces we have. Curiosity about life. What might I enjoy now? What feels good in my body now? What do I want to explore? What still surprises me? What still delights me? These are the questions that we should be asking ourselves. These are the questions that keep the nervous system flexible. They keep the brain plastic. They keep our heart open. And openness is youthful vitality. So I want to pause here because this is important what I'm about to say. I'm not saying that we should pretend our pain doesn't exist. I'm not saying that we should deny when we have limitations. I'm not just throwing some toxic positivity at you and saying, just think your way out of any real challenges that you have in your life. I get it. Aging comes with real changes. Our bodies get injured, illness happens, losses happen, and sometimes it feels as if they're accumulating. The work that I do, helping people on their health and wellness journeys, is not about ignoring any of that. It's not about refusing to acknowledge what we're going through. It's about refusing to let the realities define us and for it to be our entire story. I am encouraging you to say, yes, things might be harder than they used to be. And something is still possible here. My body may be different, and it's still capable of learning. Yes, I move more slowly, and I still move. Yes, I've lost things, and I still have things. Notice I didn't put the word but in there anywhere. We don't have room for the buts. Those are excuses. This is not about excuses. This is not about denial. This is about dignity. It's not about pretending to be young. It's just about refusing to collapse yourself into aging and oldness before your body has actually asked you to do so. How can you bring this into real life without turning your home into a retreat center from the 1970s or a museum from the 1980s, or forcing ourselves into an identity that doesn't fit our lifestyle right now? There are a few gentle ways that we can apply the spirit of Dr. Ellen Langer's work. Number one, take notice of the language you use about your body. Start paying attention to how you talk about yourself, not only out loud, but internally. Do you say things like, I can't, I'm too old for that, that's just how my body is now, what do you want from me? Sometimes those statements reflect reality, but sometimes they're just automatic scripts that we tell ourselves. Try softening the language. Instead of saying, I can't do that anymore, try, that's harder than it used to be. Let's see what's possible. Instead of saying, I'm too old for this, try, maybe there's a version of this that'll work for me. Instead of saying, my body doesn't do that anymore, try saying, my body does that differently now. Language shapes our perception. Our perception shapes our behavior, and our behavior shapes our experience. Number 2, do one thing a younger version of you loved doing. Try it this week. Do one thing that you used to love to do. Maybe it's walking somewhere this week instead of driving there. Maybe it's turning on your favorite tunes and dancing in your kitchen. Maybe it's riding a bike or swimming. Maybe it's playing a game. My grandfather, Papa Victor, taught us a card game many years ago called Steal the Old Man's Pack. My grandfather's been in heaven since 1991. But when I play the card game, Steal the Old Man's Pack, it's 1980 all over again. I can hear him. I can see him. I can feel his presence in the room with me, as if I am my younger self and he and I are still together. Try writing something out by hand. Try singing loudly. Try spending a little more time outside than you usually do. Do these things not to relive the past, but to reawaken a part of yourself that still exists. You're not trying to recreate who you were back then. You're just trying to reconnect with who you still are. Number 3, engage your body every day in everyday ways. You don't need a gym membership to do that in order to keep a youthful body. You just need a gentle challenge, regular movement, purposeful motion, and variety. So you can try carrying your groceries instead of dragging them. Stand up while you're folding your laundry instead of sitting down. Walk around your room while you're talking on the phone. Stretch or do some heel raises while you're brushing your teeth. Move around the room while you're waiting for your coffee to brew or your kettle to boil. Try to weave movement into your life. This is what's going to keep your body adaptable, and adaptability is youth. Number 4, stay curious about your life. Ask yourself those important questions. What do I enjoy? What surprises me? What do I want to learn? What feels good now? Don't think about what you can't do. Don't think about who you used to be. It's about staying open and curious to who you are becoming. Number 5, let yourself be capable. One of the most powerful aspects of Dr. Langer's study was that the men were treated as capable adults, not as fragile elders. They weren't hovered over, they weren't over-assisted, they were trusted. And that trust changed how they moved. So let yourself be capable. Let others trust you as you trust yourself. Let your body prove itself to you again. Do it gently, safely, and kindly. Capability doesn't mean pushing. It just means participating. One of my favorite questions from the study was this one. What if time isn't just something that moves forward? What if it's something that we inhabit psychologically? Have you ever noticed how when you're really having fun, time flies, and when you're grieving, time just drags? When you're engaged, time just disappears. When you're bored to tears, time stretches endlessly. Time isn't just measured by the hands on the clock. It's measured in experience. When we place ourselves psychologically into something that's vital, engaging, meaningful, curious, the body seems to respond as though time has softened instead of reversing. It's like a river that still flows forward, but it becomes gentler, wider, and more easy to navigate. And that's what I think that this study really shows us. Not that we can go backward, but that we can widen our present moment. We can inhabit our lives more fully at any age. I think we need to remind ourselves and start thinking that aging isn't a closing, it's an opening. Aging isn't about losing capacity, it's about shifting capacity. Maybe you run less, but you'll be slowing down, so you'll notice more. Maybe you are moving more slowly, but you're going to be moving with more awareness. Maybe you're speaking less, but you notice that you're listening more. Maybe you're doing fewer things, but you're going to do each one more fully. Maybe youthfulness isn't about speed or intensity or productivity, but about presence and engagement and openness. The men in Dr. Langer's study didn't become younger versions of themselves. They became more alive versions of themselves. And that has no age. So we should ask ourselves, what does vitality feel like in my body? What does vitality feel like for me? Don't judge yourself by what it looks like or feels like in somebody else. What is it for you? Is it feeling lighter, steadier, softer? Does it mean that you're living a life of more meaning? What's the one thing that you can do this week to invite more of that into your life? So this is why I wanted to bring this study to you, because it reminds us that aging isn't just something that we can endure, it's something we participate in. And our participation changes our experience. It reminds us that we're not passengers in our bodies. We are partners with them. We need to remind ourselves that we are not finished. We are still unfolding. And that vitality isn't something that belongs to a certain decade. It belongs to us. If I could turn back time, I don't think I'd go to a different year. I think I would just go deeper into this one. And maybe that's the real invitation to us all from the study. Not to wish for the past, but to live more present and more fully. Not to fear aging, but to meet it with participation instead of retreat. Not to chase youth, but to cultivate vitality. Because vitality is not about how many candles are on your cake. It's about how alive you feel when you're blowing them out. Thank you so much for spending this time with me and the Wishing You Well podcast. If this episode resonated with you in any way, I would be so grateful if you would share it with someone who might need a little reminder that they are far more capable than they think at any age. As always, I'm wishing you well in your body, in your mind, and in your beautiful unfolding life.